Welcome to the weekly current affairs class. Today we will be dealing with topics from society as well as security. Our first topic, you must have come across a topic that is identification of scheduled tribes. Okay, there was a news with respect to inclusion of Hatti community in Himachal Pradesh, okay, which was given the scheduled tribe status, and it also evoked some kind of protests, okay, among the other tribal communities, specifically Gujar community. Okay, so here we need to discuss about how the scheduled tribes are identified. Okay, what is the criteria for the identification of scheduled tribes? Okay, what are the basic things that are looked by the committee that is appointed by the union government or basically by the cabinet that looks after that we have to give a particular status to the scheduled tribe. What is the required need of this? Okay, why is that criteria fine? Does we need to look after some another criteria? Okay, do we need to modify that criteria, or what should be the way forward with respect to the present needs of the tribal community? We have covered this topic many other times also. Basically, who are tribals? Okay, what are the issues that are faced by the tribals? What should be the way forward? Forest Rights Act. You can also check those videos also for the comprehensive coverage of this topic. Okay, first of all, I will again like to give you some brief information that will be helpful for your prelims exams as well. Okay, that article, it is the article 342. We have already discussed in our other videos also, that provides for the specification of tribes or tribal communities for the purposes of constitution or deemed to be scheduled tribe in relation to a state or a union territory. What article is that? That is basically article 342. Even when the president notifies, okay, any scheduled tribe under article 366 subsection 25, it states that the tribal communities that are present in the article 342, okay, they shall deem to be the scheduled tribes. And further, we have also earlier also discussed that it is the parliament which by law include or exclude from the list of scheduled tribes specified in a notification. The parliament will make a law and basically will decide that we have to include some particular community in the list of scheduled tribes, or we have to exclude that particular community from the list of scheduled tribes. Okay, there are over 700 ethnic groups that have been identified as scheduled tribes across the states and UTs. But if we look across the 2011 census, we will come across that it is a scheduled tribe. They constitute around 8.6% of the total population of India. Okay, that is the basically 8.6% of the total population of India. That is our present status. Okay, this can be helpful with respect to your introduction, okay, of any topic, but this is helpful for your prelims exams. Okay, that this type of question may be asked, that who decides, it's basically who includes or excludes the scheduled tribes from the list. Okay, then parliament is there, president is there, or cabinet decides, whatever question that options may be given to you, or they may also decide that who issues a notification with respect to scheduled tribe, then that will be the president. Now coming to the criteria, okay, on the basis of which it is decided that how tribes will be given the status of scheduled tribes. First of all, it is very helpful for your prelims exams that there is not anything that is specified within the Constitution of India that who will be a scheduled tribe or who will not be a not be a scheduled tribe. As such, there is no criteria that has been spelled out in the Constitution or laid out under any law, but there has some basic criteria that have been accepted and generalized, that yes, these are the basic things, okay, on the basis of which we will identify that yes, this is a scheduled tribe or this is not a scheduled tribe. And what are that criteria? Okay, first of all is the indication of primitive traits. Okay, indication of primitive traits. Primitive is basically very simple society. Okay, today is a complex society, okay, where there is so many occupations, urbanization is there, so many things are going on. Okay, that is a complex society. But according to the primitive traits, primitive means very backward and very simple society. If they are showing their traits, then they will be considered as a scheduled tribe. Then distinctive culture. Okay, they have a culture which is basically separate from rest of the mainstream society. They have their own indigenous gods, they have their own indigenous cultural practices which they have their own festivals which they celebrate. Okay, geographical isolations, they may live in forests or hilly tracts, etc., any kind of geographical regions. Okay, then shyness of contact with the community at large, like we see in Sentinelese or Jarawas in the Andaman region, who do not like to make or basically establish a contact with the outside world. Okay, they basically live inside their own society. Then backwardness obviously can be social as well as economic. Okay, social as well as economic backwardness, both the things should be decided. Okay, these are the 5 traits on the basis of which it is specified that if any tribe is a scheduled tribe or not a scheduled tribe. First of all is a indication of primitive traits, number 1, then it is a distinctive culture, number 2, then geographical isolation, then shyness of a contact, and last one is backwardness that can be social as well as economic. Okay, now moving forward, okay, what is the need for basically change in the existing criteria? It has been alleged by some experts that, see, this criteria is decades old, we need to modify this criteria according to the present socio-economic conditions of the society, so that it can present a more accurate reality of the society. Okay, so it is stated that if these outdated criteria are still going to be adopted, there may be hardly few communities to qualify for the scheduled tribe status, and many of the existing communities will lose their status. A flexible criteria needs to be adopted. Okay, some of the primitive traits like geographical isolation, backwardness, that criteria, that basic thing can be, what we say, maintained. Okay, or some new criteria, some new features, they may also be included in the basically new criteria. So what it states is that if these outdated criteria are still going to be adopted, there are many communities basically that may also be excluded from the scheduled tribe status. Okay, and many of the existing may also lose their status. Okay, so what we need is we need a more flexible approach according to the present needs of the society. So what we need to do is we need to adopt some new criteria, and what are the why those changes are needed, we will look after that points also. See, over the period of time, especially after independence, the tribal communities have been going under the process of transition and acculturation. See, acculturation, I have already explained this point in one of our previous classes, that what is acculturation. It is a process. For example, A and B communities are there. A community will try to influence the B community and will change some of the existing cultural practices of B community, and similarly B community will also try or may influence the cultural practices of the A community. Okay, for example, presence of caste in Islam, that is acculturation. The culture has been modified after contact with the Hindu society, so that is acculturation. Similarly, with respect to the tribal society, the community has gone through the process of acculturation. It has basically modified its cultural practices as it has come into contact with the mainstream society. Whatever religious community or whatever cultural community may be present in the periphery or in the mainstream society, okay, as they came in contact with that basically community, what happened was that they were able to influence some cultural practices of the tribal groups, and they were able to modify the tribal culture. So that is acculturation. And due to impact of planned change, modernization and globalization are the other basic points. Okay, globalization, we have already know that it has influenced many cultures of our society, many basically our what we say, our regional disparity, our women section of society, tribal section of society, our agriculture, our economy, our many aspects basically of our what we say, how we look after our food, our lifestyle, our all the habits that we are basically gaining these days basically are influenced by the process of globalization. And similarly, the process of modernization, the emphasis on the government to basically transform a society that is engaged in primary agricultural activities to a society where it is transformed to a service economy, okay, and a transition basically from a rural to an urban society, okay, that is modernization, or a transformation from a feudal to a modern political society, that is modernization. And in this process basically on this three, if I take a general viewpoint, in the under the process of acculturation, globalization, modernization, under the influence of these three basically, the tribals are also, what is happening is they are also basically going through the process of change. Many cultural practices, many traits have been influenced and modified. So what we need to do is they show some distinctiveness in their culture, but regional variations cannot be ruled out due to acculturation influence or the adjoining population. So what is happening is that, see, if like I have earlier told you, for example, we are a diverse society, okay, our culture is not uniform throughout the length and breadth of the country. So and the area where the tribal is living, okay, adjoining culture basically makes a huge influence. That culture may not be present in some other states, okay. For example, if the tribal is living in the Odisha state, so the tribal culture will be the major influence. If the tribal is living in the northeast state, so the northeast culture will be a major influence on the tribal groups. So there is a regional variation. Our new criteria basically, the process of acculturation which shows this regional variation, it needs to be basically showed in our criteria, okay. The criteria should reflect this regional variation, so that all the tribal communities who are backward, socially and economically backward, who have not undergone the process of modernization, they can be included with this criteria, so that they can avail the benefits of the government schemes. Our next point is, just give me a second. Our next point is the major issue with respect to the term primitive. The term primitive has been challenged as it has been considered as a value loaded term. What is value loaded term? It is a subjective term. It has been argued that, see, the individuals, the tribal societies, they are basically criticized for being primitive. But what is being primitive? Okay, do they themselves consider themselves as primitive? Okay, it is from our perspective we see that they are backward, but from their perspective they may be living a fine life. Okay, so what is primitive? So this is a value loaded concept. It depends upon different interpretations. Okay, it is used as a tool to criticize the other indigenous cultures in society. So it is considered as a condescending attitude by the outsiders. Outsiders means the individuals who do not belong to the tribal society. They are saying that basically, yes, you are backward, you have a primitive lifestyle, but the individuals who live in their own culture, they may not see themselves as backward. So besides, the so-called primitive is a stage in the evolution of a community through which all the communities have passed or are passing. It is primitive is a term basically which is not exclusionary to any specific community. Okay, if we consider that, see, this is a level of stage of development from A to Z. Okay, this is the most advanced stage of development, and here individual was primitive. Okay, very simple, no development. Okay, every community, every civilization in the world basically started from this point and reached here. Okay, it is not that only tribals are going to primitive. At some point of time, our Indian society was also primitive. Similarly, with respect to the outside influence, okay, our American society was also primitive. Greek society was also primitive. Chinese society was also primitive. So the development happened, and they basically, over the period of time, they were able to reach the advanced stage of development. So why to criticize someone for being primitive when your society was also at some point of time basically situated at this point? Okay, next basically issue is of migration. See, migration in India, we already know that basically social mobility happens in our Indian society, and because of economic and employment opportunities, people migrate through the length and breadth of the country, from Bihar to Mumbai, from Mumbai to Delhi, or all types of rural to urban, urban to rural, okay, rural to basically rural, all urban to urban, all these type of migrations keeps on happening. So what is happening is they are able to basically, they were frequent for political, economic and ecological reasons. Okay, political maybe because of that democracy is not there, freedom of speech and expression is not there, okay, economic opportunity is there, ecological is that, natural prone, disaster prone areas that is there, okay, even the most isolated groups were part of the wider network of economic relations. Isolated groups here are the tribals, because economic society is ever changing. They are also not immune to the influence of economic influences in the society. They, if they have to live, they have to survive, they will also have to earn in the society. So out of economic opportunities, they also migrate to other parts of the country. So there are only few tribes which are totally isolated, like I have already told you, like the Jarawas and the Sentinelese in the Andaman and Nicobar. There are very, for example, take a hypothetical number that, for example, if there are 100 tribes in our India, then basically almost, at least you can say that 90 are now basically open to the wider society. They have some sort of exchange, economic, political, cultural, any sort of exchange with the mainstream society. There are only very few basically isolated groups that basically are not open to the outside world. So why basically tribals also migrate, and our new criteria, it should reflect the kind of discrimination, the kind of exploitation that is basically faced by the tribal group, so that it can adequately again reflect the reality. Okay, if we are including a criteria that is backwardness, as I have already told you that backwardness can be social or economic. Okay, so migration is also one of the parameters which shows us that, okay, if individual has migrated from place A to B, what kind of economic status the individual has, what kind of basically health status the individual has, what kind of education attainment level the individual has, what kind of a job opportunity levels the individual has. So that will be able to adequately reflect what is the status of the individual in the society. So these are the things that should be reflected in our new criteria. Moving forward, it has also been proposed that, see, what can be the new criteria, okay, for inclusion of new communities in the scheduled tribes. Okay, it has been itself proposed by National Commission for Scheduled Tribes, okay, to have a holistic perspective rather than an isolated criterion. As I have already told you, okay, what is, because our new old criteria that we have discussed, basically it does not adequately reflect the scenario. So what can be the new things? That is common community name. For example, for a group identity, or may have a different names as subtribe section, okay, by which they identify themselves and the names by which neighbors call them. So this can be also can be a criteria. We need to identify a common community name or a group name on the basis of which the tribal community is called. Okay, for example, there may be many A, B, C groups living, okay, they may have some internal differentiation among them, but they may be called by some common collective name by the outside individuals. Okay, if there is a common collective name from 4 to 5 or 10 communities that are okay there, but no problem if they have internal differentiation also, but they can be excluded in the new scheduled tribes list because the outsiders see them as a collective common group. So that can be the one thing. Then distinct language or dialect, that can also be the point. For example, if there is a language that is 500 years old, 1000 years old, okay, on the basis of that we can also say that it is a part of the distinct culture, okay, and that distinct culture needs to be preserved. Okay, okay, that distinct language or dialect which may or may not exist today. The community may be bilingual, speaking own language among themselves and local or regional language to communicate with the others. I have already told you, okay, take a scenario that if there is a tribal language A, then there is a state language that is B. If they interact within themselves, they basically communicate through their language A because that is a tribal language. But if they communicate with the outside individuals, through the wider state people, they use the language B because that is the state language. Now what is the problem with the language A here is that it is a tribal language, it is a few years old, okay, because it is used by the only tribal groups in the state, it may not be preserved and may basically be diluted or basically foregone. So that needs to be preserved. If there is any kind of scenario, any dialect or language that is there that is losing its touch, okay, or is basically spoken by a only single individual tribal group, we can consider that yes, it can be included in this list so that the group can be, identity of the group can be preserved. Now Next one is presence of core culture relating to life cycle, songs, dances, paintings, folklore. In your history classes, you have studied the many things with respect to tribal identity. Okay, language is one of them. Another things are also there, like dance is there, music is there. Okay, paintings, art folks, architecture. If these kind of things are also prevalent with respect to any tribal group, that group can also be considered with respect to the inclusion in the scheduled tribe list. Okay, then endogamy or marital status primarily within their own community and with the other scheduled tribes, what kind of basically status, marital status they have, that individuals have, whether that is similar to with respect to the mainstream society, or that is something different with respect to they have some their own criteria. For example, we have our scheduled tribes in many in the northeast as well as in the southern parts of India, where there is matriarchal society. Okay, incest marriages are also present in very few tribal communities also. So that kind of criteria can also be looked upon. So you will find a common analysis here, common thread in all these criterias. That is the basic thing here is basically to look upon the social backwardness. Social backwardness is a very subjective term. Okay, so all these basically points, they point to only one thing, that is social backwardness. How we can create a scenario where the social condition of the tribes can be accurately reflected. Language also comes under the social criteria, the culture and art thing also comes under the social criteria, marriage, marital status, that also, then community name is also a social criteria to adequately reflect basically the social status of the community in the society. Moving forward, then another thing is autonomous religious beliefs and practices. Okay, as I have already told you that tribals have a distinct culture of their own. They are basically indigenous groups, so they may not be following or practicing the dominant religion that is having that we are having in the society. If there is any cultural group or any tribal group that is having its own distinctive religious practices, may or may not have a sacred text to follow of their own, but they still believe in their own god, own religious practices, that group can also be considered. Then basically, what is the status of the traditional institutions in the basically in the tribal group, marriage, family, caste, what are the basically, what is the status, are they still practiced, are they not practiced? Then basically level of techno economy, that will reflect earlier points. If our reflect social backwardness, this thing will reflect economic backwardness. Okay, what kind of technological penetration is there, what kind of economic development is there within the tribal community. If that is also low, then that group can also be considered for the inclusion in the scheduled tribes list. Then relative socio-economic and educational backwardness. Okay, as I have already told you, what is the basically education level of the community, literacy rates, what are that? Okay, what is the basically health status, anemic level, MMR rates, IMR rates, on the basis of which we can consider that yes, that group is backward or not backward. So the new criteria, we can say that the new criteria that is proposed, what it wants to reflect, it wants to reflect social and economic backwardness. Okay, it wants to reflect social and economic backwardness. It wants to add new points in this basically criteria, so that basically the social and backwardness, economic backwardness, what is present at the ground level, that can be adequately reflected in our basically proposed criteria, so that the communities who are excluded from this basically benefit that is given by the reservation or that is given by the union government, so that or by the constitution itself, that can be given to the marginalized groups within the scheduled tribes also. So this was our first topic that was there. Moving forward to second topic, just give me a second. Now second topic is with respect to hate speech. Okay, hate speech, I think we have already once in earlier also discussed about this topic, but again here we will discuss. There was a news with respect to in Indian Express with respect to the topic of hate speech. See, the topic of hate speech can be covered under two dimensions. Okay, one is political and another is social. Okay, politically you can talk about the legal status that is there, or the Supreme Court guidelines, or the cases that are there, all and so on. In the social aspect, what you will talk here about is the consequences or the impact. Consequences or the impact. how it will impact basically society. Okay, how it will basically influence the integration of the society. Okay, that is our major focus here. Okay, so first of all we need to know basically what is hate speech. So as per the basically 267th report of the Law Commission of India, hate speech can be stated as an incitement to hatred primarily against a group of person defined in terms of it can be race, it can be an ethnic group, it can be a gender, basically it can be on the basis of sexual orientation, it can be on the basis of religious beliefs and other things. Okay, okay, race for example Aryans and others, ethnicity northeast groups, southern individuals, okay, on the basis of gender women, sexual orientation LGBTQ, okay, religious Hindu, Muslim, Sikhs, basically so and so on. So the incitement to hate can be against any individual or a group of persons. Okay, more or less basically it is looked to made synonymous with the religious groups because that is a primarily the differentiation that is present within our Indian society. But more or less if you will say about that is it can be incited against any group. So that is a very comprehensive definition. And if we talk about the religion, as I have told you that it is a major differentiation in our society, there is a section 295A of the IPC which prescribes a punishment for deliberate and malicious acts intended to outrage the religious feelings of any basically group or the individuals. Okay, section 295A deals with the hate speech with respect to the religion. Okay, not with respect to race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, no, but only with respect to religion. Moving forward, as you have already known that what is hate speech. Okay, we should look at basically what are the social consequences, what impact can it have on the social integration of the society, how it can affect the relationships between the different communities. Okay, first of all what we need to look at is that the relation between speech and violence is of critical importance. Okay, it can provoke emotions resulting in communal violence as well as the riots. Okay, that is the first thing that we need to look at, basically relation between speech and violence. If some individual has made us very provoking speech which can arouse the emotions of the individuals or the group of basically any particular community, basically what can it lead to? Those emotions can lead to communal violence as well as riots in the basically society. You have very examples with respect to that riots. Delhi riot is there, 84 riots is there, okay, etc. Many examples you have where you can find the context of hate speech and violence. Second issue is with respect to, see, it can be used to marginalize the vulnerable sections of the society. Here vulnerable I am not only talking about religion, all the groups on the basis of race, gender, ethnicity, all the groups, sexual orientation, all the groups, as it promotes discriminatory practices and the gratuitization. Okay, if some individual is making a hate speech, okay, against another groups, what it can result in societies, other people can basically marginalize. There may be a discrimination, the hiring practices of the companies, there can be a discrimination in giving the houses to the individuals, there can be a discrimination in the basically free movement of those individuals in the public. Okay, how people interact with them, which can basically promote that is discrimination itself as well as the ghettoization. Okay, what is ghettoization? When members or a basically majority of the people from any community, religious, race, gender, sexual orientation, any community live in a particular area and they are not allowed basically to live in the mainstream area because out of discrimination, nobody is renting them houses, nobody is selling them their houses. Okay, so they basically live in the very particular spaces where all the members of that community only resides. That is called as a ghettoization. That is a major issue with respect to this. Then there is a violence, then discrimination. Curbing of individual freedom is the violation of the right of others to live with dignity. right of others to live with dignity. When we are promoting violence against any group, when we are promoting discrimination against any group, what is it impacting? We are basically curbing their individual autonomy to live freely in society. Okay, when we curb the basically freedom of the other individuals, basically what happens is we violate their right to live with dignity. That is called as Article 21 of the Constitution. Okay, that is a major issue with respect to curbing the individual freedom. You can also talk about that, yes, this is also the violation of the Article 19 of the Constitution. Okay, hate speech can also basically promote majoritarianism. Okay, by basically referring to the cultural practices of a particular religion, creating a context of superiority versus inferiority, superiority versus inferiority. Okay, the basically distinction that see our group is superior to other individuals and we should dominate the political, economic and social aspects of society, so it can lead to the majoritarianism. Next one, it erodes the idea of secular, plural and diverse India. Okay, our secular India that is mentioned in the Constitution, plural India that has been basically maintained over the course of 1000 years, then diverse India where diversity is celebrated on the basis of race, religion, linguistic, any or region, on the basis of any basically differentiation you can take that is present within the Indian society. So these things basically we can see that they can basically erode the integration of our society. I will again repeat the points. Basically, first one is basically relation of speech and violence which can result in communal riots and violence. Then basically it can be used to marginalize basically individuals, can provoke hate speech which can result in discrimination and ghettoization. Then basically it can curb individual freedom and thus further eroding the right to live with dignity, thus essentially violating Article 21 and 19 of the individuals. Then it can promote majoritarianism by basically creating a context of superiority versus inferiority. And at last it erodes the idea of a secular, diverse and plural India. Moving forward, that how we can basically curb these things. Okay, how that we can basically preserve the social integration of our Indian society, what things can be done. First of all, effective laws can be made covering wide ambit of hate speech. Okay, a very holistic definition of hate speech, so that if somebody is even making an indirect reference, okay, to hate speech, that individual can be nabbed by the law enforcement. Okay, and second thing is effective implementation of our law, so that individuals, we have a rule of law in society, so that individuals know that if we are making something derogatory, okay, derogatory remark to the others, basically then we will be having to face the wrath of the law. Then second thing is awareness among people. Many a times basically the people of the country, the citizens, they do not know what is hate speech, okay, or what are the contents of hate speech, that if somebody has spoken something, okay, was it derogatory or not derogatory, when an indirect reference is made, something with respect to awareness can be done. Okay, then role of media, it is called as the fourth pillar of democracy. Fourth pillar of democracy. So accountability of those violating the constitutional morality. Okay, the media should call out those individuals, name and shame them, that yes, you are eroding the constitutional morality of the country, and basically create a pressure so that they do not repeat this kind of things. Socialization, okay, with respect to religious pluralism, diversity and secularism, okay, specifically at home, in our schools, so that children are taught about they are the next citizens of the basically of the society, or the future of the society. Okay, then they should be taught about what is religious pluralism, how you have to coexist together, what is diversity, how is the secularism important for India, so that basically individuals who are going to be the future of our country, so that they can preserve the basically secularism or the diversity of the country. Then majority of the times we have seen that hate speech basically origins from or stems from the fake news. Okay, so we need to curb the fake news through the basically accountability of the companies, through the making effective algorithms, so that this thing can be curbed out as well. So these are the measures that can be used: laws making and implementation of laws, awareness among people, role of media, then socialization, and basically the tackling of the fake news. So that this was all that was there with respect to this topic. Okay, the another topic that was in news basically was that the C295 aircraft industry manufacturing facility that was inaugurated by our Prime Minister. Okay, so here I want to tell you about one thing. We will be covering this topic in very brief, because in our last very few classes only we discussed about that idea of defense indigenization. Defense indigenization, why is it beneficial, okay, or what is the need of it? So you can also look out for that video for a holistic perspective, okay, but I will be in very brief also again telling you this. Okay, the foundation for the C295 aircraft facility was inaugurated in Vadodara in Gujarat, which is to be set by Air Defence Space and Tata Advanced Space Limited. So what is the basically why this is such a huge news? This is basically very significant because Indian companies, you will see both public as well as private, they have quite a basically presence in the civil aviation manufacturing. Okay, and because of this presence, because of this global footprint, we will be seeing that 40 aircrafts, okay, under this basically mechanism will be manufactured in India. That is basically a very big boost to our aircraft industry as well as the overall defense sector if we talk about. Okay, so that is why it is important. And moving forward, okay, after basically as manufacturing will take place in India, so it will give boost to our defense indigenization. Like I have already told you that you can look about basically what defense indigenization is important, or what is its need, how it can be helpful to us. Okay, if 40 aircrafts are manufactured being in India, that is also by Airbus, so that is a huge news for us, because it will create the supply chains to be for India to be the part of global defense system. Okay, so but in brief also I will tell you about what are the basic benefits. Okay, first of all, as the industry will be set up, obviously it will lead to the job creation that we know. Okay, then basically it will also give boost to the MSME sector, because for it some of its needs the industry will be dependent upon some another industries also, ancillary industries, which will be providing a help or support to the major industry. Then it will boost our manufacturing capabilities. Okay, the new technology, basically the new machineries that will be transferred to India. Okay, then creation of industrial corridors. For example, if it is set up in Vadodara and some or 2-3 plants are also set up on the same pattern or on the same lines, it can lead to the industrial corridor where basically which is important for aircraft industry. Okay, some kind of that corridor can also happen. Then it will also lead to sharing of critical information and infrastructure, because the contract is with the international private companies. So as and moreover they are manufacturing in India, so they will transfer the crucial information and the technology as well as enhancing the capability of our own to manufacture these kind of products in the future. Then growth in maintenance, repair and overhaul. Obviously if our manufacturing sector is being developed, they are manufactured here, all the maintenance, repair and overhaul things basically with respect to these things will also be tackled in India. That is also a boost to us. You must have noticed that fewer times we have to depend upon our foreign correspondents for the even the maintenance and the repair of our basically defense products. So that kind of things can be laid rest to, and it will lead to more basically close relationship with EU and Europe, because these are the private companies that belong to these areas. So we can make a comprehensive strategy on Indo-Pacific. Okay, that thing can also get a boost. So these are the major benefits that you can list basically of having a defense indigenization or having a manufacturing capability in our country. Job creation, okay, boost to MSME, manufacturing capabilities, industrial corridors, sharing of critical information and infrastructure, technology, maintenance, repair and overhaul, and basically close working relationship with Europe and Europe and US, so that we can work effectively on an Indo-Pacific strategy. For more analysis, you can go watch the video of the defense indigenization. So that is all that will be from my side. Okay, we will be meeting again next week. So have best of luck.